welcome to the Virtual Reading Roundtable, our very first Virtual Reading Roundtable. Again, Alex Bond from the Eno Center. We're happy to have the whole leadership team here at the office, and we're going to be starting these roundtables pretty much quarterly, 4 times a year. It's a chance for us to keep learning after we leave class. Everybody on the line here, by the way, is an alumni, an Eno program. And we'll talk about that in just a second. But we'd like people to keep engaged with the topic of leadership and have a chance to bounce ideas off each other. And we thought one way to do that was to have Article Club, and one way to do that. And we have a bunch of resources we've got in the hopper we're going to cover through the year. But in this particular one, we're going to be talking about Michael Watkins, how managers become leaders. So one of the few things before we get started, there is an evaluation of this at the very end. And we want to make sure you stick around to answer that. I want to see how we're doing on this. As you go through, you might want to enter some questions in the chat box. There's a small enough group here that I think we'll be able to open up the phone lines, unmute everybody so we can talk in a pretty open fashion once Aaron is done presenting. And just a quick note that some people in this webinar and in the roundtables throughout this are going to be from Eno's Future Leaders Development Program, which is a little bit different than the transit leadership courses that we also host. The Future Leaders Development Program is for graduate students, at least when they come to class. They're going to be working professionals after that. It has a little bit less leadership content, but we may get some interesting perspectives from people who went through that course versus those that are more of the transit leadership focus. So we have an excellent speaker today, and Erin Shoemate. I think virtually everyone on the phone is going to know her pretty well. Erin is really brushing up her skills in the leadership and management area, wrapping up her MBA on this exact topic. So she's the one actually reading the current stuff on this. So Erin's going to be taking the lead on a lot of these roundtables. So with that, Ms. Shoemate.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's virtual reading roundtable, our very first one, as Alex said. Today, we're going to be talking about one of the thorniest challenges that leaders face today, which is stepping into their first role running an entire organization or enterprise. So, few career transitions are more difficult than leading an organization for the first time. It's a much bigger job than leading a function or a department, and a lot more complex. Understandably, executives tend to feel very overwhelmed and uncertain when they make the big move. So Watkins goes through 7 seismic shifts to kind of make that shift from manager to leader once you have made it to that adjustment. A thorough understanding of each of these transitions can prepare any leader for success. So I'm going to take you through the 7 seismic shifts, as well as some examples of them and strategies to help you get through the shifts once you are a leader or about to be a leader. So the first one is a specialist to a generalist. So this is one of the most common traps, overmanaging the department you know well and undermanaging the others. So when you shift from specialist to generalist, this means resisting the urge to stay in your comfort zone. You'll need to understand the distinct subcultures, mental models, and languages of all of the company departments and become familiar with the various tools they use. And in the areas where you don't have expertise, you'll need to lean on the people around you and learn to ask the right questions to figure out that information. So don't play it safe. Consider the story of a transit executive we'll call Harold, a play off of Watkins' Harold, who was a sales executive, and we just made the examples into transportation themed. So after rising quickly through the ranks at a large transit agency, Harold was promoted from his role as COO, where he had a team of 1,000 people, to general manager, where he was overseeing over 6,000 people in the entire agency. He was feeling very disoriented and unsure of himself, so he initially clung to what he knew best, which would be the COO, the operations department. So wisely, Harold's agency had surrounded him with a seasoned team who gave him blunt feedback, and one of his advisors said, "You're driving your operations folks crazy, you need to back off." The team also provided guidance in critical areas where he had less experience. So that's an example of where Harold was going back to what he knew best, the operations, and not playing the general he needed to be in his new position. The next one is an analyst to an integrator. A functional leader's primary responsibility is to hire and manage people who focus on analytical depth on specific activities. An enterprise leader or organization leader is to integrate the collective knowledge of functional teams to solve important organizational problems. So when you make this shift, you need to make sure to make tough trade-offs and explain them to everyone around you. So let's look at Harold again. He found himself struggling with this particular shift as he tried to juggle the many competing demands of the agency. So for example, his CFO wanted him to raise fares to make up for some of the lost revenue on development, but his deputy general manager for diversity said it would make the system cost prohibitive for lower economic riders to use. To resolve conflicts like this and to be more of an integrator, he had to balance the needs of various functions, consider the impact raising fares would have on ridership, and figure out a new way to raise funds to help the organization. At the organizational level, understanding trade-offs and explaining decisions effectively became more important than the analytical skills Harold had used to manage the operations functions previously. Now, some of you may recognize this one if you've taken our transit classes, from the tactical to the strategy, or strategic versus tactical is how we refer to it in our classes. So it's very similar to that, but a little bit of a different take. So for many leaders, focusing on the tactical issues is extremely seductive. It's something that they know how to do and they get instant feedback about it. The activities are concrete and the results are immediate. It's tempting to lose yourself in that day-to-day flow of attending meetings, putting out fires, and pushing projects over the finish line. But a leader's role is to really be the strategist in chief. To do that, you have to let go of the details and adopt a broader mindset. So there are a few skills that we recommend as you make this shift to focus on. One is mental simulation, the next level shifting, and the third pattern recognition. So mental simulation is when you are anticipating how outside parties, so competitors, regulators, and the media, etc., will respond to what you do. Level shifting is knowing when to focus on the details, when to focus on the big picture, and then how the two relate. And pattern recognition is identifying important causal relationships in a complex environment. In other words, separating the signal from the noise. So looking back at Harold, he called on his mental simulation skills when TNCs were first introduced into the market. He needed to address the immediate threat, but he also had to anticipate what the rival's long-term strategy might be. Was the convenient ride the first in a trend away from traditional transit modes? Were the firms purposely trying to take away ridership from transit in an effort to shut down the traditional model? Thinking strategically about the problem helped him realize that TNCs were not going away and they were not out to get him or transit. They were just trying to solve a different modal issue. He was able to be a first mover in forming an innovative partnership with one of the companies to solve the first last mile issue his ridership was facing. The next shift is bricklayer to architect. New executives tend to charge in, itching to make their mark. They might shake things up with a major reorg or change a strategic direction with a new offering or a new business line. But to be effective, you need to think in terms of systems. You have to understand how the organization's strategy, structure, processes, and capabilities all fit together. You can't alter one element without thinking through the implications for all the others. The fifth shift is problem solver to agenda setter. So many managers are promoted for their ability to solve problems, not necessarily for their ability to manage or lead. But when you become an organization leader, your job is to define the problems, and then the organization should tackle. To do that, you need to identify the landscape of opportunities and threats facing your business. You also have to understand the white spaces. So these are the issues that don't fall neatly into any one function. An example of that might be diversity, and they're still very important. Working on which areas to focus on, so setting the agenda, is largely a matter of learning from experience. But you can also use organizational tools such as your firm's annual planning process to establish key goals for your various units. When I read that one for the first time, immediately what came to mind was the Covey urgent, not important model. Not urgent or not important. So this is the 4 quadrants If you're not familiar with Covey whatsoever, he is a leading expert in leadership models, and this is one of his more recent ones, or more famous ones from his 7 Habits book. So the first quadrant, which is Q1, is urgent and important. So what you'll see, these are crises, these are pressing problems, they're deadline-driven problems. The second being not urgent and important. That's relationship building, that's recognizing new opportunities and planning. And that really goes into what the agenda setter should be doing, as well as the strategists, if we go back to that second shift. And that's where most leaders need to be spending their time throughout their days, is really in Q2. So this is the important but not urgent section. Q3 and Q4 are also important in their own ways. If you spend most of your time in Q2, spend the other time in Q1 and Q4, and try and little time in Q3 as possible. So the next shift is warrior to diplomat. This shift means that you'll be spending much less time marshaling the troops and more time engaging and influencing a full range of stakeholders. You'll be bombarded with requests from groups inside and outside of your organization. So how soon can you meet with a key group of stakeholders, the constituents, the union, the board, your executive team? They're all going to be pulling at you to get more of your time. What are your plans for the agency moving forward? What changes do you plan on making to improve the existing system and infrastructure? You're going to have all different types of people pulling at your time, and you will have to be able to manage them in a diplomatic way. As a leader of an organization, you're just not going to be resolving the issues as they crop up, but you want to proactively address them as before they come up. So that requires sharp skills in negotiation, persuasion, conflict management, and alliance building. So the last and final shift is the supporting cast to lead role. So becoming a leader means moving out of the wings and taking center stage. You might find the constant scrutiny unnerving or be surprised by how much stock people put in what you say and do. If you make an offhand suggestion about a new line or bus route, for instance, a feasibility report might land on your desk in the next 2 weeks. So you really have to watch what you say and do, as everyone is looking to you as the lead role. So all managers are role models to some degree, but at the organizational level, everyone looks to you for vision, inspiration, and cues about the right behaviors and attitudes. So it's critical to cultivate self-awareness and empathy with other people's viewpoints. And if you've taken any of our transit classes, that's a very common theme throughout the entire class. So an example for this, returning back to Harold, was he was a strong communicator with his operations team when he was at that COO level. And in his functional roles, he had maintained a degree of personal contact with most of his employees. He made it a priority for him to walk the garages at least once a week to get face time with his staff. But now that he's overseeing thousands of different locations and thousands of different people at different locations and functions, his old ways of walking the bus garage wouldn't work. So when the time came to share the annual strategy with his organization, he realized he couldn't simply go out and tell the people person to person at each garage. He had to work through his direct reports and find other channels such as video, email, and direct mailings to spread the word. So this reminded me of Phil Washington, who is the current general manager at Los Angeles Metro. Prior to that, he was at RTD. And when he got to LA Metro, he really put out his vision, and LA Metro is over 10,000 people as far as employees go. And he put out his vision in a statement that went to their houses, it went to their emails, and it went all over every bus garage in a memo form. So he really took the different ways to get his message out to everyone on his staff at all different levels, and made sure he did that. And now, even to this day, he's been there for a few years now, he is still putting and reinforcing that same vision and mission for Metro. So a few strategies if you're an aspiring leader or a seasoned leader. There are different strategies for each of these levels, and we'll take a quick look at them. So strategies for an aspiring leader. So volunteer to take on cross-functional projects or problems. Seek exposure to a broad range of situations, and then raise your hand for any international or out-of-state assignments that might develop a more global perspective. Strategies for seasoned leaders. Once you've grown and shown that leadership promise, you're going to be a more attractive candidate for senior management positions. So at this stage, it's more important to gain experience with external stakeholders, such as investors, media, customers, constituents, etc. You'll also want to tap into other leaders for mentors. As you face bigger and bigger challenges, such as leading a reorganization or managing a large project, you'll need to cultivate your external networks. We like to call that your kitchen cabinet. So whenever anything happens, that you'll have a kitchen cabinet to go get any tool out of, whether that is a peer from another agency, a peer from a different department within your agency. Just really expanding that network will help you as you move forward into the seasoned leader position. And then, of course, executive training is a great way to learn new skills, such as the transit classes. APTA has great classes, and NTI, as well as other executive training classes that are outside of transportation. So in summary, think like a leader and think holistically. So the transformation from manager to leader is in large part about letting go of many of the skills and ways of thinking that you got where you are and embracing a new, more holistic view. Such as Harold learned, having a seasoned team in place to guide you will make the transition essential. And there's no substitute for actually making decisions and learning from them. But by understanding the shifts that we've discussed today, you can start preparing for a successful first organizational leadership assignment. So if you want to learn more about Watkins as well as this topic, Harvard Business Review has a number of different articles that are really great summaries and further learning as far as this topic goes.